The advice and opinions expressed by Dr. Granpesheh and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice.
Dr. Doreen Granpesheh is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism.
Doreen Granpesheh.
Dr. Granpesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpesheh is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen.
Good morning and welcome to Ask Dr. Doreen. I'm Shannon Penrod, and look, I got to get my Carol Merrill right. Look who we have here with us, Dr. Doreen Granpesheh. Good morning. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. How are you, Shannon?
I am better because I'm here with you. That's just always true. So thrilled to have you be able to be here with you. This is really, we were just talking about this. This is the last Ask Dr. Doreen of 2024. That is insane to me. But obviously we're continuing in 2025, but thrilled to have this opportunity to be with you. If you guys don't know, Dr. Granpesheh is a true expert in the field of autism. She donates this hour whenever she possibly can on Tuesdays to interact with you guys live and answer your questions. I don't know anybody who has a bigger, brighter vision about helping and supporting and being, good assistance to individuals who are on the spectrum than Dr. Granpesheh. She's been doing this for a hot minute. We're well into the over 40 years that you've been doing. That doesn't even, the math does not add up. Look at you. Look at you.
Ages. My goodness.
So, but you've been helping individuals from very young children up through senior citizens to be able to live their best lives and helping them to be able to achieve the things that they want to do, which is critical and important. So Dr. Granpesheh is here. She's going to answer your questions in real time. We do have some questions that came in before, and we've got a starting topic. Our starting topic this morning, it's a live wire one. What is a prescription for ABA based on? We're going to get to that in a minute. We've already got some people with us. Andrea Waldron is here with us. Good morning to you. And Rosie is here. Rosie, we're waving and saying hi to you. Dr. Granpesheh, if you'll indulge me, I have to give the disclaimer. I got to do a couple of things first. I'm getting ahead of myself. First of all, we have to tell you that there is no expert in any field who can give individually specific advice in this format. It would be a disservice to the individual and a disservice to the expert. So please write in your comments for Dr. Granpesheh. We will have the opportunity to take a tour of her lovely mind, and she'll give you some wonderful things, maybe some questions for you to answer and to take back to the expert that has eyes on the situation for you. Also, our fabulous Chris Desmond is showing you some of the different ways that you can interact, that you can be watching or listening. We know that most of you listen in podcast, but there are a core group of you that watch live, and we love that. We love interacting with you. You can be writing in like Andrea and Rosie, and we're saying hi to Sarah as well, who's joining us. And we thrive on that, do we not, Dr. Granpesheh, when we get to interact live? But we love it. We love it when you guys listen in podcasts. Please remember, it is the end of the year. We love it when you like, share, comment, review, and follow, and all of those wonderful things. That's what helps to keep us on the air. We're going to be starting our 15th year. Woo! That makes me dizzy to think about. But please participate. Also, when you listen to us in podcast, you are hearing advertisements. That's how we make it free for you. If you would like an ad-free podcast, all you need to do is go to glow.fm/autism live. It's $5 a month. For that $5, you get everything that the Autism Network does, including Ask Dr. Doreen, including Autism Live, and you get that ad-free in your inbox for just a low price of $5 a month if you do not want advertisements. Okay, we're going to get to our topic in just a minute, but before we do, I have some stuff that I want to show you guys. This is what I was saying, if you'll indulge me, Dr. Granpesheh. I know something about you that I think other people may not know, which is that you like to craft.
I do. I love crafting.
And it's good for the soul, right? Not only is it good for us, but it's also good for our kiddos, because there's so many things that you can work on when you're doing an art project or a craft project with your kiddos. But I think part of the reason why we tend not to do as many art projects is because first you have to gather all of the supplies, then you have to figure out what you're doing. You got to have a creative jump start before you do the project. And I don't know about some of you, I know for me, sometimes I'm too tired by that point, right? Or if you had a craft signed, all set up for me, I'd be all over it. But to set it up myself, then run it and do it and the cleanup, yeah, sometimes it's too much. Well, in this year's toy guide, we featured a couple of things that are the answer to that. There's a wonderful company called Mikador, and they make these wonderful art kits where everything you need is already in the box. It's so delightful. Now, this particular one, which won one of our awards for best art craft item, this is the sensory painting and drawing. And I just want to show you that it literally comes with everything that you would need. You've got wonderful instructions for you to follow as you're teaching that. You've got plastic to be able to put down so that you're not making a big mess. There's felt in here. There's different kinds of paper that are shiny. There's, a white paper. This is actually a canvas that's thick so that you can frame this afterwards. There's black, there's white, there's sparkly, there's all these different things. It comes with crayons, it comes with paint. There's all kinds of things in here so that you can do whatever you want to do and get busy. I love that they really want the sensory, so they're encouraging you with the paints to use fingers instead of brushes. A really early start. That was an award winner. I also want to say that sometimes people say, the paint's too messy. My kiddo can't do that. I just want to say to you, your kiddo can. Just put down a whole bunch of plastic over your table. But if you really don't want to do that, there's this one, which is Sensory Crazy Creatures, and it's all stickers. They're all stickers, nice. And you start with a base, and then you put they've got sheets of eyes, and within seconds, there's ears, there's all feet. You can create all these different things just with the stickers. And then there are felt pieces too, so that you can add the sensory element. There's washi tape with it. It's so good. All in one box, you guys, for a low cost. Now I'm going to show you some more stuff that they sent. It's awesome. But here's the really amazing thing. It's all on Amazon. And if you order it today, it'll still get there by Christmas Day. Awesome. Which is crazy. And they're so, they're like priced for us, for people who like a bargain. So this is, if you've got kiddos that you want a little bit more robust, this is for ages 3 to 8. This is Amazing Ideas Paint. Oh my goodness. You get this lovely book with all these activities that it shows you, the parent, so you don't have to think it up. It's got all kinds of paper here that you can use, but you get watercolors. You get 3 different pots of paint. Awesome. You get paintbrush. You get the washi tape. It's all there together so that you can create all of these projects. You won't even believe the price. Go look it up on Amazon. Just a fabulous thing. And then there's a whole line that they have. This is my favorite, I have to say. I'm sorry, I'm all over the map here, but they have a whole line of things that are Mikador Dark Arts. That means it glows.
Oh, nice.
So much fun. Now, this particular one, have you ever made a nebula in a jar, Dr. Granpesheh?
No.
Okay, it's the most fun thing, but it can be messy, right? Unless you're doing it with Mikador. So you have a jar and you've got everything that you need. They have in here. It's just insanity, everything that is included in this. They've got stickers and the paint. What you do is you put down a layer of paint in your jar, and then you put down a layer of cotton balls. And then you put down another layer of paint, and what it creates, and this is glow in the dark paint, it creates, if you do it one way, it looks like a brain in a jar, but if you do it another way and there's little stars that you can put in it, it looks like a nebula. Those pictures that we get from the nebula, so much fun, but then it glows in the dark. I've done this project with my nieces where I didn't have the kit, and I went to 3 craft stores and, spent a small fortune. This is the whole thing. You could buy one of these for each child, and have it be a wonderful hour and a half activity. And then they have something that they put on their nightstand and it glows in the dark. It's so cool. And they have so many glow in the dark paint things in their dark art. I don't know about you, but I have a nephew who has 7 children. And they're all different ages, and I never know what to get to send. And I've been racking my brain about what to send. And I realized this morning I'm going to send a whole box of art kits. They can do together, super inexpensive. Amazon is promising that they can still deliver these kits before Christmas.
Yeah.
So,
and it's such great timing right now. People need activities with the kiddos because they're off school, and these are all sound so much fun. Awesome.
And then you're done, and you pick, throw away what you didn't use or can't use, and you're done, and it's quick cleanup, you guys. So what a great thing to be doing. Great stocking stuffers, great to put under the tree, great for Hanukkah. So amazing. Micador. Micador, Micador. Check them out on Amazon. You can also see some of their products on our toy guide. Go to autismnetwork.com to see that. Thank you for indulging me, because I get excited about this stuff, and then I have to talk about it.
No, it's great, Shannon, especially because right now I think a lot of parents just need ideas. So This is a great thing.
Yeah, it's wonderful. All different age ranges. Hey, we're saying hi to Nicholas. And Cindy is here with us. She says, hi, Doreen. Alex's mom from the Dr. Phil show. Love that you do these Q&A. You have been so helpful with Alex. Mom asked in a group I'm in if any parents have been told that their child was being released from ABA for not thriving. Ooh, there's a question.
Wow. Hi, Cindy. Long time no talk. So nice to hear from you. Yeah, there are situations where it's rare, I will say that, but there are definitely scenarios where I feel like the medical issues that a child is burdened with are so severe that those have to be dealt with first. Right? I think some of our children have so many different issues going on, whether it's gastrointestinal or lots of other mitochondrial, etc. issues, sleep-related, allergies, all sorts of things. And under those conditions, especially when it's severe, it really is very hard to teach the child or place additional demands on the child. So those are cases where I feel like it would be appropriate for the family to look at other things that are helping the child stabilize the health and so on before heading into ABA. But in terms of whether or not ABA works, it works with everyone. It's just kind of what else is on your plate at that time.
Yeah. I will say what I am seeing is that there are kiddos that are being, that they're having their ABA, they're being released from their ABA because the child is not available to do enough hours to be of benefit. I'm seeing that.
Even 1 hour can be beneficial. The issue becomes how much time is passing and how much are we accomplishing in that passage of time, right? So it's kind of like we have 10 things that we need to teach and which would benefit your child, right? And if we spend the next 3 years teaching those 10 things, we're going to fall behind because over the course of the next 3 years, there's lots of new things that we have to teach. Yeah. But if we spend, 6 months and we accomplish those 10 things, then we're doing great because now we're helping your child catch up. That's really the key to it. So, and intensity becomes a very big factor because, obviously if you're doing 2 hours a week in 6 months, you're going to accomplish a lot less than if you're doing 20 hours a week in 6 months. Yeah. So really it's just about, how can we tackle all the things that the child needs in as little a time as possible and as a short period as possible, because the older the child gets, the more new things they need to be taught.
Yeah. And this kind of dovetails into our topic today, which is what goes into a prescription for ABA. And maybe we need to backtrack just a little bit. I want to make sure everybody knows ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, considered the gold standard of treatment for autism and has been since the 80s. And that everybody that's in the United States now, pretty much everybody in the United States, there are mandates in every state that behavioral health needs to be covered in your insurance plan. So almost everybody has the ability to access funding for ABA. I got to pick my words because not everybody has the ability to access the actual treatment. There are waiting lists.
Right.
But certainly for a lot of people, if a diagnosis of autism happens, there is a prescription that is given for a specific number of hours for ABA. There's a whole lot of misunderstanding around this prescription. And I can't think of anyone who would be better to address what this is, what it means, what goes into it than you.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I like talking about this. So the way that the whole thing starts is that as an ABA provider, you're supposed to do a pretty comprehensive evaluation of the individual and determine their needs, right? Because every child is different and in lots of different ways, different in a lot of ways, different in their needs, that's one, different in their age. That's an important factor because as you get older, more and more things are expected of you in society, through school, through life, etc. And different in obviously these medical issues and other surrounding issues that influence how you learn, right? So we really do need to do an assessment when you begin. And that assessment produces a picture of the child. And that picture tells us lots of different things. One is, first of all, it starts with what does the family want for this individual, right? What are the goals? Based on, some parents will say, oh, I want to do as much as I can right now because I really want my child to stop doing these various behaviors, challenging behaviors, and I want them to communicate, go to school, blah, 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 like lots and lots of things, right? So it's a whole big set of goals. Other families will say, honestly, I don't really want my child to change all that much, but these specific behaviors are very difficult to manage and we need help with these things. So there's a selectivity that occurs right at the beginning based on the parents' goals, right? So that's number one. Secondly, when you do these evaluations, you identify the child's strengths and areas of weakness. And this is very important because you look at the symptoms of autism, and the symptoms of autism are basically a series of observable behaviors that tend to detract or take away from the child's ability to succeed in society. And I'm going to say that again. The symptoms of autism, they're classified together as autism, which is a disorder. Why? Because when all of these symptoms exist, it makes it very difficult for the individual to do well in society. So as an example, some of the symptoms are, delays or lack of communication. So either communication doesn't even exist verbally, or there are significant delays. So just think about that one alone, right? On how, if you are unable to communicate with others, how it can affect your ability to have a healthy life. You're not able to communicate your needs. You're not able to understand what others expect of you. You are not able to interact with others. So it causes isolation, it can cause a lot of frustration, it can cause the appearance of challenging behaviors because you can't communicate your needs. So just that one symptom alone can have very significant repercussions, right? And there are other similar symptoms, sensory symptoms, stereotypy, the inability to have social interaction. There's a lot of autism symptoms as a whole make life more difficult for the individual. So basically what you do in the initial assessment or evaluation is we list areas that are affected, that should be altered if we want this individual to be able to join society and thrive. Again, one example is, okay, this person doesn't communicate. I need to teach them communication. Now, the fact that they don't communicate has also led to certain challenging behaviors. So I also need to get rid of those challenging behaviors and teach this individual that the more they communicate in an appropriate way, in an adaptive way, and the less they communicate through challenging behavior, the more they're going to interact with others, the more they're going to be accepted in society, the more they're going to succeed, thrive, etc. So all of the areas of weakness or the symptoms of autism, right? And you break it down a little bit further. For example, the person doesn't vocalize, communicate, right? The person also doesn't give any eye contact whatsoever. So you miss a lot of information when you don't look at people, when you don't give them eye contact. So that might be an area that we want to work on. The presence of stereotypical behaviors like lining up objects or finger flicking or hand gazing or just gazing corner of the eye, those types of things. They might not be significantly problematic on their own, but they certainly remove the individual from what's going on around them. Do we want to address some of those and make sure that the individual is a little bit more aware, a little bit more present, and not engaging in those stereotypical behaviors, for example? Then there's sensory issues. You want to pay attention to those and say, okay, this individual has a lot of sensory needs. They really engage a lot of time in, putting things like certain textures on their hands and so on. Are we okay to leave those alone, or are they detracting from the individual's attention and ability to learn, right? So those types of things. And then as you go through and you basically list all the different areas, one very significant one that often gets ignored, but is very common in people with autism, is the perspective taking or theory of mind deficits, where a lot of individuals on the spectrum have a difficulty or even inability to see things from someone else's perspective. And when you're unable to see things from someone else's perspective, believe me, that impacts a ton of things. It impacts your ability to understand other people. It impacts your ability to understand social situations, to understand jokes, to understand deception. There's a lot of things that are impacted just by that one area of delay. So basically, you do a very full comprehensive evaluation. You identify a series of behaviors that are deficient, right? They're not occurring at the level of a typically developing individual of the same age. And then you also identify certain things that might be excessive. For example, all of the challenging behaviors that we see in our kids, which are not specific symptoms of autism, but they are side effects due to the frustration the individual experiences. So because they cannot express themselves vocally, for instance, they might hit or they might run away when they're frustrated, those types of things. So all of those challenging behaviors are listed. And then the concept of ABA is, hey, I'm going to try to reduce these challenging behaviors because I'm going to teach the individual more adaptive ways to communicate, more adaptive ways to calm themselves. And at the same time, I'm also going to really teach skills that will allow the individual to be able to express themselves, that will allow them to be able to interact with others and interact with society, and kind of like bring their behaviors closer to the behaviors that are expected in society, right? So teaching a lot of new skills and also not accepting some of those bad habits that had formed. And so that's the core of ABA. Now the question becomes, how much of that do I want to do? That has a lot to do with the severity, how severe are the symptoms of autism in this particular individual? What is their age, and what are the overall goals? And so let me give a few examples of that. So if you have, let's say, a child who is 2 years old or 3 years old, and we've just started to identify some of these issues, right? The child has some basic vocalization, hasn't developed a lot of language. Their language is delayed, but it still exists to some extent. For instance, they might vocalize the basic needs, but they're pretty isolated the rest of the time because they're not understanding very advanced language, for example. But they haven't developed a lot of challenging behaviors, maybe a few, like with their sibling or peers. They might tantrum when a demand is placed or when they don't know how to express they want an object, those types of things. That individual is definitely is the type of person who has a lot of potential because the symptoms of autism have not affected them yet significantly. So, and they're young enough where there's a lot of time, right? And so, and when I say well, there's a lot of time, because remember, when the person turns 5, 6, etc., there are additional demands, right? There's school now. We also have to deal with academics and all these other things. But when the individual is 2 or 3, we have plenty of time to teach, and a lot of available time. So what do? In that case, we set very high goals because we have time to teach those things. The individual is young and they're not affected severely by the symptoms. So we have the highest goals we have at this point is like, I'm going to teach this person everything they need so that by the time they're 6 or 7, they're indistinguishable. They can go into society and not have to receive special education or additional tutoring. They can be mainstreamed, integrated into regular education, and hopefully they will just go on and their behaviors will be fantastic and they'll be able to interact with others and so on and so forth. So with that individual, we're going to recommend a very intensive, what we call early intensive behavioral intervention, EIBI. And that is appropriate for younger children who have time and are not significantly affected, because we think that in that period of time, let's say 3 years, if we do very intensive work, we can actually catch them up. We can catch them up to peers of the same chronological age. And that's why we do these 40-hour programs for younger children. These are EIBI programs, and that's why it's funded, because the belief is that if we do a lot of intensive work right now, this individual is not going to need support for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
Okay, then now let's go on to, let's say, a 6-year-old child who is what we call a level 2-2. So they have some language delays, some stereotypical types of behaviors or sensory types of behaviors, but they still have a lot of potential because they are learning very rapidly. They are paying attention. Let's say at this point, there are other issues, whether it's sleep, medical, dietary, all of those types of things have come under control. So what are we going to do with this individual now? Well, the individual is already in school. So, they might be receiving some form of support in school, but the bigger issue is that they're in school for 30 hours a week. So their time is limited, right? The amount of time we now have with the 6 or 7-year-old is maybe limited to 20, 25 hours a week of one-to-one intervention time. So let's say they get out of school, right? So we can actually do ABA with them every day from, let's say, 3 to 7 p.m. and we can do some on the weekends. So we can get in about 25 hours. That's great great because in 25 hours, we have the ability to teach this person so many of the skills that they might be lacking. We can help them understand so many of the issues that are holding them back. And definitely we can teach them new behavior patterns so that, they're learning how to make friends, they're learning how to learn better in school, they're able to regulate their own sensory needs, their own challenging behaviors. And so for a child like that, we might be doing something like 25 hours a week of ABA. In the old days, Shannon, we were able to do 25 hours with that individual as well as give them a lot of support in school. So another 10 or 15 hours of one-to-one support in school. It has become harder and harder to do that as schools don't really allow providers in school all that often. They have their own one-to-one aides, and it's a whole nother kind of can of worms to open. But if we're able to give the individual 25 plus hours of quality ABA, that is the ideal type of prescription for that type of individual. Now, as the person ages, let's say now we're talking about a 10-year-old, and there are some significant delays at this point. Okay, we still do an assessment of all of their needs, but then we ask ourselves realistically, what are the most important areas that we want to focus on? Because not only is there limited time, because obviously they're in school until 3 o'clock or so, but there's going to be limited resources too, because as you age, what happens is payers, insurance companies tend to feel like, okay, we need to focus because we're not going to be doing intensive programs for the rest of your life. We really need to focus on the things that are the most important to your condition right now. A lot of times when I'm working with, let's say, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds, the issues have to surround mainly challenging behavior. I mean, there's obviously lots of 9 different severity levels of kids with autism, but let's say typical child, by this point, a lot of their frustration, right? They're frustrated because when they were younger, they didn't learn a lot of language and communication and subtle, the eye contact, which allows you to read facial expressions, and they didn't learn theory of mind or perspective taking. So they don't understand when other people are their friends or they're making fun of them. There's frustration, and they might have lots of sensory issues that have become ingrained now. So the individual tends to have more frustration. They have a harder time merging with society. And so now with this individual, I'm focused on the things that are the most important. Is this someone where I have to focus on safety because they're running away from home? Is this that becomes a priority for me as opposed to, let's say, teaching them academics or teaching them, how to, do chores at home. Those things are important too, but safety takes priority. Communication instead of challenging behavior takes priority. So we now have to prioritize the things that we want to work on. And again, we have to hope that the payers, the insurance companies, are willing to pay for, let's say, 15 hours a week, 3 hours a day, to allow us to teach those things. And, although there are plenty of research articles showing that ABA continues to work until adulthood, there are not, unfortunately, a lot of research studies that show that you can actually catch up completely with all the skills that you need if you start later and if you don't do intensive when you're younger. So, our insurance companies unfortunately use that. And because of that, it's very, very unlikely that they will pay for a 25, 35, 40-hour program a week. And so we are left with fewer hours. And with those hours, we really have to prioritize. The prescription really, just to summarize, has to do with what are the needs, how much time do I have? Because remember, our prescription with ABA is not a pill that you take, it's hours. It's hours. And so how many hours can I actually realistically provide this individual? And given those hours, what are my priorities?
There we go. I want to address just a couple of quick things here. Cindy wrote in and said, will this episode repeat later, or is there another way to watch this show again for parents who might miss this information, info on ABA? I love that Chris was able to write back and tell you that this episode will be available on Ask Dr. Doreen's YouTube channel later on today. It will be available as a podcast later on today. So it will live on in perpetuity. And it's free for you guys to be able to watch. So either go to the Ask Dr. Doreen's YouTube channel or find it in podcasts wherever you get your podcasts. I also am saying good evening to Park, and they said thank you as always. Ronald has written in about a very specific child in their life. But before I get to that, and we've got a bunch of other questions as well, I just kind of want to back up a little bit and talk about, because I think often parents think that this prescription has come out of nowhere and that it's one size fits all. I see a lot of parents who go, okay, well, so they've recommended 35 hours, but I think what's going to work for us is 20. Mm-hmm. And I always want to say to parents, I always say to parents, of course, it's your decision. Of course, it's your decision. But if you're going to reduce the hours, you need to reduce the expectation, because those hours, that prescription is tied to an expert saying this is the pathway to get where you want to be, that you've said that you want to be. And if you decide not to do the whole thing, then you have to realize you are not going to get where you said you wanted to go.
That's exactly right.
There's a disconnect there that I always struggle with. And I think part of it is that everybody sort of thinks that it's a one size fits all. And maybe I should ask the first question here, and then we can start to piece this together. Somebody wrote in and said, my 3-year-old was just diagnosed with autism. We got a prescription for 30 hours a week. That seems like a lot to me, but now I'm hearing some people say that if he's 3, he should have gotten a 40-hour prescription. What is right, and how is a parent supposed to know? Good question.
Yeah, great question, and it is difficult. And honestly, the more hours, the better. So, and the only reason we say 40 and not 50, by the way, I'll give some background on that too. So the original study that was done that showed that ABA works, and works like incredibly, was a study that was published in 1987, if you can believe that, by Lovas, anyone interested, Lovas. And his name is Ivar Lovas. And Ivar was my mentor. I worked with him at UCLA for 12 years. So with Ivar, what we did with this study, I was actually part of this study, we took groups of children and there were 3 groups of children. One group, and they all matched. The groups matched in terms of their levels of severity and age. And so what we did is with one group, we did 40 hours of ABA, but that wasn't all we did. The reason that the 40 hours came out is that we worked with these children all waking hours. That's exactly how it was defined, all waking hours. We, the therapists, did 40 hours, but we trained the parents to work on top of that. So some of these kids were getting 50 hours, 60 hours, because the parents were part of our team. They were trained, they would work with the kids. Now, why 40? Because the parents were unavailable for 40. They went to work. That's how much we work, 40 hours a week. That's how the 40 came about. But realistically, the idea is you're supposed to work all waking hours. And I just finished summarizing the study real quick. Group 1, which was the experimental group, received, all waking hours therapy. Group 2 received 10 hours a week of therapy. And group 3 received 10 hours a week, but from another clinic. They were doing things that were not specifically ABA. In those days, it was called behavior modification. They were doing other types of intervention. What ended up after a couple of years was that the group 1, 47% of the kids, almost half of the kids, were indistinguishable from peers, which basically meant that they had normal IQ testing and they were mainstreamed in school, regular education school, without assistance. Half of the kids in that group that received 40 plus hours of one-to-one. Of the other two that received 10 hours a week, 2% achieved that, essentially one child. So it was a huge difference, 47% versus 2%, which showed that the more intensity has a significant effect. Just think about it, you guys. If you want to pass a test and you want to get an A, what do? You cram. What does cramming mean? It means you do a massive number of hours. So it's all about hours. That's the whole thing. The more hours you do, obviously, the child learns more. And if you do it intensively, like in a shorter period of time, they're learning more faster. And the faster they learn, it's very important because remember, every year that passes, the child ages. And there's a lot of difference between a typically developing 3-year-old and a typically developing 4-year-old. There's a ton more stuff that they have to learn when they're 4 and 5 and 6. So we're teaching things they fell behind on, as well as trying to keep them up with their chronological age.
Okay, so much information there, so powerful. I want to address, because, that was about a 3-year-old. And we heard very distinctly, more is better.
More is better.
Right? But Ronald has written in and said, because you were talking before about unique children, my child is 6, nonverbal, but doesn't have any big behaviors.
Right.
And this is part, I love that you wrote this in, Ronald, because this is part of the discussion, right? Because this is an individual. So their prescription is individual. Talk about what might go into their prescription.
So it really has to do with you know your child, and the question is, what do you want them to accomplish? Just think of it that way. What would you like them to accomplish in what period of time? It's wonderful that they don't have challenging behaviors. Now, what do you want for them? Would you like them to improve their communication through an augmentative device? Would you like them to attempt to learn vocalization, so language? Would you like them to integrate into a particular type of school classroom? Would you like them to learn to play music? What are the things that you want for your child? And then we have to identify also how fast your child learns. And we sit down and we say, okay, well, it'll take X amount of hours over the next 1.5 or 2 years to teach this particular skill. And then we also want that skill. So let's add them up. And the total that we want right now is, let's say, 10 or 15 hours while your child is also in school. And we hope that in the next 2 years, we will, using these 15 hours a week, have gained the skills that we would like. It's that simple. In fact, at CARD, what we do now is we have identified a number of lessons that can be taught within an hour. And so when you have a 10-hour-a-week lesson program, there's just so many programs I can work on. When you have a 40-hour-a-week program, there's a certain number of lessons I can work on during that time frame. So really, it's all about kind of figuring out what our goals are and how fast does the child learn, and putting that together in terms of a recommendation for what's best for the child. And remember, some kids are doing really well in special ed in school. We want to maintain that. Other kids, let's say, thrive on some physical activity that they have on a weekly basis. We want to maintain that. Other kids have health issues that we need to take care of. So we have to put that in the program. It's really just about customizing it to meet the needs of the child.
Amazing. We have a question. My 4-year-old daughter just started ABA and they wanted us to do 34 hours a week. I just thought that was too much, but they told me they couldn't start her with any services if we didn't commit to 24 hours a week. So we did. But we've had to cancel several times, and now they are saying that if we don't do all of our 24 hours that we originally agreed to, they may stop all of her services. I just wanted to know if this is legal and where I should report this type of extortion.
Okay. So you have to think about this as benefiting your child. I'm trying to think of a different way for you to see what goes on. The providers are not being selective because there's so many children out there who need help, right? Think about that. There's lots and lots of kids who are coming in who need help. The provider, though, does have a goal. Let's say, God forbid, I'm going to give a different example and not use our children, but just anyone. Let's say someone has cancer, right? And we have a certain amount of chemicals that we need to get into their body, chemotherapy, within a certain period of time before this tumor or cancer gets worse, right? So we have a goal. The goal is to give X amount of chemotherapy sessions followed by X amount of, radiotherapy sessions, whatever it might be, as a treatment plan. Now, assume a patient comes in and the family says, we'd like to do half of the chemotherapy because it just feels too much. It just sounds like it's too much. What's going to happen? Your end result is going to fail, right? You're going to have a failure on your hands because you didn't do the intended course of treatment. Now, what happens for that doctor who has multiple failures? Their reputation gets destroyed. The insurance companies won't refer to them anymore because they have failures. Other patients don't come because you have a lot of failures. So the only thing that your provider is trying to do is to prove to the payer, the insurance company, that what I'm recommending works, and here are children that show that it works. Because remember, over the course of time, if a lot of children don't benefit, if a lot of children do less than what's recommended, if they do half of what's recommended, and they don't accomplish the goals that we want them to accomplish, over the course of time, guess what's going to happen? Insurance companies will stop funding ABA. Believe me when I tell you that is what happens. In fact, even right now, the reason that our older kids can't get funding is because there's not enough research. There's not enough publications showing success of older kids. So if you are blessed by the fact that your child is still young and that you have a provider who has recommended a high number of hours, please take advantage of that. You will not have that luxury forever. Do everything you can to get your child those hours. Think of it like chemotherapy. Think of it as this is the most vital stage of my child's life where their brain is very flexible. Remember, this is why we teach kids languages before the age of 7, because your brain is able to suck in a lot more information when you're young than when you get older. There's nothing bad about doing intensive work. There's nothing bad about a provider who says you need to do at least 25 hours. They don't care. They could go and give that to someone else. They're not trying to make money off of you. They're trying to help your child. This is such an important distinction.
Yeah.
A lot of parents say, oh, ABA providers just want to make money off of this. No, because we at CARD, we have 60, 70 new patients trying to get in every month. Every month. Yeah. There is no trying to make money off of it. It's trying to do the right thing by every child. That's what this is about. Absolutely. And when parents cancel and say, I'd rather, I just think it's too much. How could it possibly be too much when your child is benefiting from it?
Yeah. Amen to that. This next question goes right along with it. You'll love and hate this at the same time. We had two of our children treated at CARD, and I remember thinking that you guys were tough, making us commit to a full program for both of them. Now I think back and I'm so grateful, you and me both, right? We didn't know what we had, but we used it and it has made all the difference.
Thank God.
My sister-in-law, that's the part you're going to love. This part you're not going to love. My sister-in-law just had her youngest diagnosed. I helped her get started with ABA, although she doesn't live near a card, so she is with a different provider. And I just see that she is not valuing the treatment like we did. She cancels all the time. What do you suggest I say to her to see what she is missing? The worst part is she tells everyone in the family that she's following in our footsteps and expecting the same result. It is maddening.
Yeah, it's very, very, it is maddening. I can imagine. I think that the best way to go about this is, I mean, I can recommend two things. Nowadays, nobody really wants to talk about, use the word recovered, but many years ago, we made a video, which you can get on Amazon, which is called Recovered Journeys Through Autism Spectrum and Back. And we profiled 4 children on there that essentially all got intensive ABA. And all of those individuals are lovely adults, very, very successful in life and doing great right now. But that's one thing. Maybe she can watch that and that'll help her understand the importance of intensity. And also, the video also shows various research and so on, talks about, I think, showing her, your sister-in-law, the research is very important because parents don't realize that 10 hours failed, you guys. When people were doing 10 hours a week, their children did not reach the goals. It just wasn't enough. It's like asking someone to learn to play the piano, but only giving them 1 hour a month of instruction. It'll drag on for ages and years, and our children just don't have that time. Yeah. So that's, I think, the difference is helping the person understand the intensity matters. Not canceling matters. It's the most important thing. Being part of the plan matters. You as a parent, I know we're all exhausted, but honestly, this is just a language you learn, ABA, and it'll help your child significantly if you also get trained in it.
I always tell the story when I'm talking to parents as an apology, but when Jem was in kindergarten, there was a little girl that was in his class and she had a younger brother. So they did kindergarten. I got to know the mom and they were in kindergarten together and they were in the same school, but not in the same class ongoing. And then a couple of years later, I ran into in the grocery store, the mom. And she said, oh my God, I'm so glad to see you today because my son was just diagnosed with autism and I know you're the person, you know what to do. I saw you did what you did with Jem. You know what to do. Tell me what to do and I'll go do it. And I said, okay, but I didn't want to be, one of those people. So I said to her, well, I really think that you should, consider doing an intensive program. I really think that you should consider doing ABA. I really think that you should consider, and that's how I put all of it. I think you should consider, but I told her everything there was to tell her. I just couched it with you should consider. And I walked away feeling pretty good about it. Like I had not pressured her. I had not done any kind of a sales job, but I'd given her the information if she wanted it. And I walked away like, woohoo, I'm so good. And then 2 years later, I ran into her in the same grocery store and she came running up to me and I thought, oh, she's going to hug me and tell me how great her son is doing. And that is not what happened. Her finger was out and she said, I am so mad at you and I don't ever want to speak to you ever again. How could you do that to me? And I said, what? What did I do? And she said, you knew that I was going to have to fight for my child to get a full program and you knew what was at stake and you didn't say that to me. You should consider. You didn't tell me that I needed to act like this was the most important thing and that a clock was ticking. You didn't say that to me. And because of that slowed my son's progress. I don't ever want to look at you again. So now whenever I talk to a parent, I say, I'm going to tell you this story to apologize for the fact that I am not going to mince words with you right now. And I'm going to tell you that you have a moment right now and that you play a big role in how you decide for your child's future right now.
Yeah.
And I just apologize for that. So I want to say to this mom, I know this is your sister-in-law and there's a relationship at stake here, but I live without regret now. And I say to people, I don't care if you never talk to me again, but I'm going to tell you right now, your house is on fire.
Yeah.
And if you don't do X, Y, and Z, you are going to kick yourself the rest of your life, and you're going to wonder what could have been. And I don't want that for you. So here's what you need to do every single hour you can get them to do. And then you need to pressure them to give you more. Be nice about it. But this is the fight of your life, to fight for this opportunity for your child. Now go do it. Now, if your sister-in-law says, yeah, I'm just not going to do that, then you go, okay, but I gave you the information.
Right.
That's what I do. Because I don't want anybody ever running up to me in a grocery store ever again and saying, why didn't you tell me?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's my advice. It's so funny because you sort of answered most of this question. Somebody said, I would love to hear Dr. G talk about why the original Lovas study set 40 hours as the mark. And you talked about that. But they said, does she feel like that is still a reasonable number?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I do. I think it should be more individualized, because I will tell you that, some families that we work with who are private families, so they pay for the therapy themselves and they don't want any involvement from insurance, or they're not even in this country, do much more than 40 hours, right? They have a therapist or a behavior technician with the child from the moment they wake up to the moment they sleep 7 days a week. And I believe that obviously it's all about all waking hours, right? And the more the child can get. And we didn't even realize back then how lucky we were, because all of the kids we were working with, were younger than school age. We only dealt with school in the third year. And that was such an amazing benefit that I came to realize over the years, because so many of our kids, when I opened the card, you guys, in the 90s, every single child would get intensive, right? All children were at intensive levels. And it was all private. It was before insurance came into play. And I feel like now we've lost a little bit of value. We don't realize how important every hour is. And we do all kinds of other things, whereas this is, like I said, you have to think of this as like chemotherapy. This is the thing that your child needs to do now when they're younger. And even if they're not younger, it is the most important modality of teaching your child at any age.
Yep.
And believe me, I have parents right now who are fighting to maintain 20 hours on the individual is 18 years old, the child, because they've seen the value and they want more of it. Absolutely. So please, when you have the opportunity, don't waste it. It's such a valuable thing. And we're so blessed in this country that we can get all of this funded, honestly.
I just want to add, because you said, you've said several times the every waking hour. But for people who aren't familiar with ABA, I just want to remind you that every waking hour is an educationally enriched environment that's fun and fair for the child.
That's right.
Fun
it's not
fair.
Like we're drill sergeants. No, it's actually a really enriched hour. Every hour that is enriched. Imagine what would your child be doing otherwise?
Yeah. On
their iPad, watching TV. Yeah, those things are also leisure skills are also great. But what if they had a behavior technician with them who practiced language while they were watching TV, or worked on social identification of facial expressions when they looked at their iPad? It's using every hour to its maximum to teach.
Yes, absolutely amazing. Okay, we've got time for one last question. It's a doozy. How many hours does it take to teach a child how to be a friend?
Oh, see, that's a great example. I love that, because think about what it takes to be a friend, right? It's not just a matter of like teaching the child a few questions that they can ask in an interactive type of conversation. I mean, it's all of that, right? It's like language and turn taking and conversation, and also identifying parts of the conversation, like, oh, is this a happy conversation? Should I be empathetic right now? Is there a sad moment here? Should I be upset because something bad was said? Like all of that. And it's also, who am I talking to? How do I identify this as a close friend or not a friend? What does it mean to be a friend? How can I be a better friend? There's a million things involved in establishing friendships. And that is a great example of why it takes time. Because all of those different areas that I just mentioned are individual lessons that we teach. And all of them come together to help us teach a bigger concept like friendship. So, and all of those things take time. But I'm glad that was our last question, because it's a great example of how so many different detailed skills have to be taught for every individual concept to take place.
Absolutely, and amen. Because it's our last show and we just have a minute, I just want to take a moment to say that what an amazing year it has been. You never disappoint, Dr. Granpesheh. You have been a hero in my eyes for a lot of years. That I am the beneficiary of having my son do a full program under your guidance in an amazing program at CARD. And my son just finished his first semester of his senior year in college. We are on track to graduate with, and it appears that he will graduate one of the magnas. So amazing. And we would never have been there without you. So, you've been a hero of mine for so long, and people say, oh, people who are heroes disappoint. And I just have to tell you that you never disappoint.
Thank you so much, Shannon. You're so kind. I always appreciate your wonderful, kind words. It has been a crazy tough year for all of us, because we came back and took over CARD, and we've been working very, very hard to try to expand our services and help more and more families. And it's just been a lot of work. But it is also wonderful to be back and really focused in the autism community. And I have some instinct in me that says we still have a lot to contribute.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to do that with you. I'm so grateful that I get the opportunity to do this with you. If it wasn't for you, I would not be doing this show. So thank you so much, Shannon. I know that over the years, hopefully we've brought a lot of good information to people across the world and helped a lot of people. So I want to thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.
Not just for allowing all of that to happen, but also for making my life more fun every Tuesday at 10 o'clock. So thank you so much, Shannon. I love working with you.
And I love working with you, and I thank you so much. But appreciate you so much. And we will be back with a show tomorrow, you guys. But we'll be back with Ask Dr. Doreen in January. So stay
Happy
tuned.
holidays to all of our viewers.
Yes.
Hope everybody has a wonderful Christmas, Hanukkah, and New Year's. And we'll be back soon.
And Kwanzaa, we're getting it all in one. And Kwanzaa, it's all in one in a couple of weeks. So, but tune in tomorrow. Tomorrow's the last show of the year, Autism Live. We've got a special stuff planned for then. You won't want to miss that. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Thank you so much, Dr. Granpesheh. Bye-bye for now.
Bye, everyone.
Don't forget, you can watch Ask Dr. Doreen live every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. Pacific time. We hope to see you there.